What is going on, everyone? I am BigTimeBrownie, your coach of the Green Bay Yampers, back for IPBL Weekly. Today, I am joined by Matt, coach of the what is your team name again? The Toledo Team Rockets. How you doing today, Matt?
Never better.
Is that true?
Probably not, but we'll go with it.
Awesome. So we did not have an IPBL Weekly last week, unfortunately. We also won't be reviewing those matches because I don't want to sit here for like 2 hours. So we're just going to be looking at the Week 2 matches that happened this past weekend. And then we're going to look forward to Week 3. Some news. The Toledo Team Rockets are dropping Thunderous Incarnate and picking up Thunderous Therian. And since we have you here, Matt, what was the rationale for that move?
So originally when I drafted Thunderous Incarnate, it was I needed some speed and I needed a little bit I wanted the prankster thing. But then when I got Whimsicott, at the right after the draft, before like the official free agency or whatever opened up, that kind of covered both of those things. So Thunderous Therian gives you a little bit extra power. Plus Volt Absorb is always nice. While really covering kind of this, obviously it does because it's the same typing and it's the same Pokemon really. Covers the same kind of typing issues that I had with the additional electric immunity to have on.
Gotcha. That makes sense. They're both good Pokemon. They're the same Pokemon, like you said. Um, yeah, that makes sense. I think, yeah, like you said, you do lose a little bit speed, but the one-on-one speed here is actually really, really nice.
Yeah.
Because you just guarantee outspeed all the base 100s. So, all right, why don't we get into the first match of the week, which was the 1-0 Granville Goomies taking on the 0-1 Green Bay Yampers. The Granville Goomies had a shock victory in week 1 against the London Lanterns. Almost no one picked. I don't think anyone picked them to win that game, actually. And the Green Bay Yampers coming off a 0-3 defeat to Bayer Munchlax, and I'm just gonna play the match in the background for you guys. But I guess, well, okay, so we'll go fast, and then maybe I'll replay it. So as you can see, Richie brought his Regenerator Core minus Tangrowth this week, and I ended up bringing Rhyperior, Tapu Fini, Mamoswine, Vikavolt, Latios, and Roselia, which I picked up last week. And as you guys, I guess I don't know. We can talk about the results. So the Green Bay Emperors did end up winning 4-0, and basically my strategy in this game was to win with Mamoswine by substituting, because he had a lot of Pokemon that couldn't really break Mamoswine, or Mamoswine forced some Pokemon out, and if I could get behind a sub, I could sort of do work against his team, and as you guys will see, that does end up happening in this game. I'm not going to talk about all of my sets, especially the ones that I didn't reveal, because I am playing Richie again this season, and there's a chance that I bring those back. But it's nice to be 1-1, and yeah, it's nice to be 1-1, and for me, it felt good to beat someone who isn't Akash finally in the IPBL. What'd you think about this match, Matt?
I thought it was funny. Obviously, in the first week, we didn't review those games, but in the first week, you let Mamoswine go down early, and it really screwed you over against Steven. And obviously, you learned from that a little bit. Maybe because of that, I don't know if Richie, but Richie brought, I think, every single thing except for Mean Shao, like, took a super effective hit from Mamoswine on his team. So that wasn't like, it was maybe a little bit of an interesting team choice, given that, like, obviously it's this huge threat. It hits like a truck. It has priority. It has ice ground. And also, I think, I'm not sure if partly because of that he underestimated, but I think Richie gave up Mean Shao too early. Because once that went down, because that's kind of gives him a little bit of speed to hit you with. I mean, not a ton, but enough to at least outspeed Mamoswine. And once it was that, it was pretty much just kind of like switching around until you got a place to get Mamoswine in. So it was a pretty straightforward game from there, honestly.
Yeah, so And the reason why I stayed in on the first turn was because I was like, okay, I can knock out Mian Shao, and then I know for sure basically Mamoswine wins. And he probably thought I was going to go for Sticky Web, which, wouldn't have really helped me against his team. So, I mean, I didn't even bring Sticky Web. And really the only thing he could have knocked me out with there is Stone Edge, and I think even then it was it wasn't a roll, but because he was Life Orb. But there was a chance I could have lived Stone Edge if he was Scarfed. So I just took the risk and went for the Thunderbolt there. I felt like if I were to some reason go down, I had enough answers for the rest of his team. That it did also allow Tapu Fini in, and yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think Richie, I think his team overall really doesn't have a whole lot for Mamoswine anyway. And you can see, the breakdown here. Mamoswine ended up getting 5 kills, and Vikavolt got 1, and then Salamence and Tornadus got 1 each. But Richie's team is really scary. I think the problem with Mons like Toxapex is that you can, sub, or you can set up. I mean, Hippowdon and Tangrowth actually hit decently hard, though, so... And the rest of his team actually hits really hard. So, I mean, that's what I was kind of talking about in the draft review, IPBL. I think Richie's team's a little bit underestimated because it's not all passive Pokemon. Even though he does have 4 regenerator Pokemon, they still hit really hard. And, if he has some momentum, and it's a hard thing to break down, as Dion saw in Week 1. Richie just let Dion basically do damage to himself. And ended up wearing down his team. But I was really happy that I did not have to reveal anything beyond what I did. That always is nice against a divisional opponent. Any final thoughts on this match?
No, that's pretty much it. I'll be interested to see if Richie decides to make some possible roster changes or mix it up a little bit, because as you said, he's real weak. He really struggles with Mamoswine, and ice and just ice in general, but we'll see how it goes next time.
Absolutely. All right, the next match was the Bayer Munchlax 1-0 coming into this match, taking on the 0-1 London Lanterns. And as you can see, an unfortunate Draco Meteor miss on the first turn. But is that Specs? I don't know, actually. He's probably... Actually, I think he was Scarf, based on how he played it against potentially Garchomp. But, as you guys will see, the London Lanterns actually end up picking up the victory here against Bayer Munchlax 4-0. And we're going to watch the match through. At the end, basically what happens is... Dion's able to set up his Blaziken against the -2 Kyurem. And I thought it was just really good positioning from Dion the entire game. He got the chip that he needed to, and once Steven hit that Draco Meteor, I didn't even see this comment here. What is this for? Oh, it's Dion's friend. Once he did that, it was basically game. And, once Swampert was gone at +2 speed, Blaziken basically won anyway. So I think it was a really good performance by Dion, and now everyone in the division is actually 1-1, so it's really interesting now. And, I think Dion exposed some of the weaknesses in Steven's team that I was talking about in the preview that I, unfortunately, was unable to... capitalize on because I, for some reason, underestimated Modest Richie Lucky. But overall, really good performance by Dion. What do you think?
So I thought it was a great game. There's always it's always tough playing against Steven because you have to be careful because a lot of times you do something and it took pretty much all of my planning power to beat him last year. Mm-hmm. And I realized that I was kind of running out of moves if I had to do it again. But it's a tough one, but there are some weaknesses. Obviously, Blaziken is just an absolute monster. I know that it's kind of, as far as from a overall meta game, a non-draft meta game, it's lost some of its luster, but it's still hugely threatening. It's still terrifying to play against. It's one of the big snowballers. But I think one of the underrated threads from this game is just how close actually Steven was to. Basically, Dion was relying on all 3 hits of triple axle in order to successfully, because otherwise Zapdos would have taken out Sneasel, and then like he was at +1, I think, which would have taken out at least a good chunk of what was left of Dion's team at that point. So that's something to think about. Obviously, triple axle is great, and it's a great tool for Sneasel/Weevil, but it's just something to think about. It's just, I mean, it hits that triple axle here, and then if he doesn't hit all 3, he survives the first 2 hits obviously pretty easily. But if he takes it out the next turn, then I'm not sure exactly how the speed tier was at. He probably would have had to protect, maybe. I guess he could have run with Blaziken. But even still, I think just it was a big. That was something to just think about, especially with Sneasel sit in and always be there for Ice Shard stuff.
Right. I think if he got 2 hits, let's say, I think that would have been enough to go into Garchomp with his Rough Skin Rocky Helmet. Because that does a lot of damage. But Rough Skin Rocky Helmet. And maybe been able to wear it down, but it would have been a different game because he wouldn't have had to lock himself into a Draco Meteor and go to -2 against Blaziken, so it would have been harder for Blaziken to set up. You're right, that's a really good observation there. And, it's stuff like that. I mean, that's what it comes down to sometimes. I mean, although I feel like I've rarely seen Triple Axel not hit all 3. What are the percentages on that? Do you know?
I think, so let me check to make sure. See, yeah, so each one has its own separate accuracy check. So each one does, so it's
okay, wait, so it hits 3 times, but once it misses, it's over? Is that how it works?
Yeah, so basically, the chance of hitting all 3 times is like 73%.
Okay.
So I mean, it's not like, I mean, it's relatively common, but it's also like, I mean, that's what, like a Stone Edge miss, more or less. Like, it's not like something that's like guaranteed to do.
I mean, it's like it's less accurate than Iron Tail. Yeah, Iron Tail's 75, and I feel like that move always misses. So,
yeah.
Well, so is it a guaranteed 3 hit though? Do you get the guaranteed 3? I mean, assuming it doesn't miss. Like, do you always get 3 hits? You don't, right? It can also only hit 1 time and be done.
Yeah, so each strike individually has 90% base accuracy.
Right, but assuming nothing misses, it always hits 3 times then, as long as nothing misses.
Yeah.
Okay. That move confuses me for some reason. Because I feel like, maybe I'm thinking of something else, but I feel like I've seen it just hit once and then stop without missing. But I could be very wrong.
No, it doesn't display the miss. It just does an individual. It's not like the other.
Okay, gotcha.
It's not like the other 2 to 5 hit.
Right. Yeah, I mean, Rock Blast, if you hit the first one, you're hitting all of them.
Yeah. So it just calculates it all individually. It uses 90% chance for each one individually.
Gotcha.
So the math, I just pulled it up. So it's like 73% it hits 3 times, 8% it hits 2 times, 9% it hits 1 time, and 10% it doesn't hit at all.
Okay. Yeah, I think if he got the 2 hits, I think he still would have been in decent shape. But that is, yeah. I mean, that it would have been a totally different game. I mean, I wonder if Steven could have switched out there and preserved his Zapdos. But I mean, I guess there wasn't really a switch in, was there? Into Triple Axle.
Yeah, not really. I don't know what's, but anyways.
Yeah. But it was a very good game. 2 great battlers. And as I said, the division is now 1. Everyone is 1-1 in that division. All right, next up is we're the 1-0. Both teams were 1-0 in this match. The Toledo Team Rockets taking on the Washington Pokemon team. Almost said football team. And the Washington football team won 5-0 last week against the Milwaukee Mewers. And Toledo Team Rockets won. What was the score?
Last week I was 4-0.
Okay, so last week the Team Rockets won 4-0 against the Wisconsin Whalelords, and I missed a really big chunk of this match. So I unfortunately, didn't see the whole thing, so I don't really remember what happened. I do remember the SmackDown being a thing. Surprised he stayed in there, actually. But nice read, by the way.
I did a couple times where I could kind of feel Jared was about to switch. There's like 2 or 3 times where I just like, just perfectly read. Like obviously that was a big miss there, but a lot of times where I just kind of like read exactly what he was planning on doing, which that's just how it works out sometimes. A lot of the moves, they were predictions, but they were relatively low risk ones. Like throwing Sludge Wave at Moltres wouldn't have been like a particularly high risk move or anything.
Right. Yeah. Once he was SmackDown, you really could. He couldn't stay in.
Yeah.
But yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Umbreon. So this is kind of showcase. So this is kind of where I was going with my early draft in between getting both Como and.
That was a nice read. That was a nice read.
I liked that one.
Because I thought Moltres could have been the play there, but I guess he was at 30. Was he? Yeah, so I didn't know that. That's when I started watching.
Yeah.
When he hit that earthquake.
He goes for the Toxic right into Nidoqueen.
Yeah.
I don't even know if I necessarily was predicting that. I just knew that Umbreon couldn't really do a whole lot to Nidoqueen. But kind of what the idea behind drafting with the wheel pick going Como and Necrozma is being able to have Como can pretty easily, like as you saw there, deal with a lot of things that Necrozma struggles with, especially dark types and steel types. So Umbreon obviously pretty much, unless you have Dragon Dance and you get a couple of them off and then you use Cross Chop or whatever the heck it is. It's kind of has a difficulty dealing with Umbreon, but obviously Como set up on it pretty easily and got a couple big hits off with it.
Wait, Necrozma gets Cross Chop?
It's just some, I forget which. It gets one of the fighting moves.
Wow. Sorry.
Break.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cross Chop's a powerful move. It just
so that's why it struggles to deal with dark types.
For sure.
And then once again, it was kind of similar to years where it was just kind of he had a lot of he really struggled to deal with Doublade. And so it was just once a couple of things went down, it was just kind of waiting to get to the right opportunity to set up with it.
Yeah, I think Nidoqueen is just such a fantastic Pokemon. I know it's a super effective move, but even at -1, just OHKOing Rillaboom. Rillaboom is not unbulky. But, it's just such a fantastic Pokemon. I've loved using it in some of my other leagues. It ends up picking up 3 kills in this match. Doublade with 2, Como with 1. And you do end up picking up the 5-0 victory there. How much did the Hydro Pump? That probably wouldn't have killed, right?
I don't think so. Incineroar was, I think max Spadef. Just because, that was even without the Hydro Pump, that was my primary Dragapult check. And Moltres check if I needed one. So that was, it wouldn't have killed. But also there's a couple of things as far as it mostly just did pivoting things that I think I've used one actual attack with Incineroar so far. So it mostly does pivoting things and Intimidate. So it wasn't a huge either way. I probably would have stayed in had he hit with the Hydro Pump. But yeah.
So.
Go ahead.
No. Well, obviously, again, this was nice for you because you didn't have to reveal much. I think, this is one of the problems I have with Umbreon. It's just such a passive Pokemon, and it really struggles with with setup sweepers. But I think it's hard to get a read on real. I think you just right from the beginning, once you hit SmackDown, you were just sort of on the front foot, and you just basically were able to click buttons. So, for me, it was even hard to get a read on what, Jared's sets were, or what his plan was. Yeah, I don't know if you feel that way, too.
No, I agree. I didn't get a great read on some of his sets. The only, big play that I saw from him was the Hydro Pump on Dragapult. But other than that, and then you know, everything else was what I was able to actually see before killing things was pretty standard. Sacred Fire on Moltres, bulky set on Umbreon. I'm assuming just standard set on Rillaboom. I don't know. But I didn't see a whole lot from him. But I feel like Umbreon being his only like good like psychic / ghost resist.
Right.
Pretty solid. Um, I have a pretty solid read on like what I can do team building wise against him. And also like I picked a little bit of a different team building strategy from a lot of the rest of the league where like everyone just kind of like picked their points and then like their last pick was like a meme pick because they only had like 1 point left. But Doublade is actually my lowest tiered Pokemon that I have in my roster. So I didn't pick quite as because neither Necrozma nor Como were like any of the top like 1 or 2 tiers. It gave me a little bit more leeway to do a lot more with kind of the lower tier and mid tier Pokemon.
Yeah, I think Como is one of the most underrated Pokemon, especially once people see that it's not Clangorous Soul. They're like, oh, but there's just so much it can do week to week. It is such a versatile Pokemon. I mean, it can be special or physical offensively, but it's also just a really good defensive Pokemon, too, if you want to use it in that way. And I just think the way that you're able to position is really great with your team. I think, like, Parting Shot is just such a good move for you to be able to go into either Como or Necrozma whenever you need to. And that sort of showed this week. I will say Jared's team is terrifying in Team Preview. But great win for you. You moved to 2-0, and Jared falls to 1-1. The final match of the week, I don't know if it was chronologically, but the final match we're going to be talking about is the Wisconsin Wailords taking on the Milwaukee Mewers. The Milwaukee Mewers end up getting a 2-0 victory. Yep, a 2-0 victory in this one. Really interesting match. I felt like Sahil, pretty much had it covered. It felt like he was on the front foot for most of the time. He went for the Ice Beam there, which I actually think is probably... I don't know. I mean, I didn't think he needed to do that, but also, like, I totally get why he did. There's 3 flying types there, and a Ditto, which would probably die to Ice Beam. Bash's team, like, there's no switch-ins.
No.
And, he let Heatran go down too easily, I thought, and he went for Hyper Beam too early. But I think once he starts to learn singles again, I think he'll start to get better. Yeah, I felt like Sahil was pretty much in control. Although Bash did make a run towards the end, where it seemed like he might be able to do some stuff. What were your thoughts on this match?
So I'm watching as he sits here and plays with this Grimmsnarl because I literally like messaged Sahil after his game yesterday, and I was like, "Bro, what the heck are you doing with this like Grimmsnarl? Like his last week game, like he set up the screens with it, and then basically just did nothing with the screens.
Right.
Like he didn't like his team was perfectly like he had some setup things like some things that could do some setup with it, and then just kind of didn't do any of that. So I think he did a better job of playing with it here. Not quite as like hyper offensively as I did last year with Alola Ninetales and Aurora Veil. But I think he used it effectively. Like you said, his team is kind of like there are times like especially in this team like it's a little like haphazard as far as like what's going on. Like I guess Ditto works for Cloyster, but it's just like kind of there. It didn't do a whole lot in this game, and then like stacking 3 flying types. Spectre is just kind of there. Like it hits things, but it doesn't like because of like Sahil's team. Like we thought with the Grimmsnarl always coming to switch in and never really hit that hard. So there wasn't a lot of. I mean, I don't know. There wasn't a lot that no big reads besides that attempted Ice Beam in this game. Pretty straightforward. Just kind of Sahil pivoting around whatever Bash had in at one point, and then just kind of using the screens to kind of continually just do damage until everything just died eventually.
Yeah, and I think like this week that was a good way to use screens, but I feel like Sahil, and it's not only him. Like often players are just like, oh, I gotta get my screens up early, and then it's not like really the right time, or it doesn't really do much for you. So you're totally right with that. But yeah, Bash. I mean, he had once Heatran was gone, he had no switch-ins to Lele, really, except for Ditto. But I mean, Ditto's HP stat really, it's not really a great switch-in. And yeah, I mean, I guess we basically said it. Like there was no huge reads that had to be made. So here is where I thought potentially Zapdos might be able to win if he was discharged and got the paralysis, or if Sahil wasn't Sash. But Rocks, I think Bash needed to get Rocks up. I don't know if he had Rocks, but I think that would have actually been really helpful. Because otherwise, behind those screens, Sahil really just was able to switch around and do the damage he needed to do. Sahil probably could have gone for a better differential, but I think he just went for the guaranteed win at the end with Cloyster, and I mean, that's just a totally fine way to go about it. So looking at the standings in the Kanto division, the Toledo Team Rockets sit above in first place. They're the lone team in first place at 2-0 with a +9 differential. The only team in the division with a positive differential. Washington Pokemon Team in second place at 1-1 with a 0 differential, and we are head-to-head first tiebreaker in this league, so they do currently have the tiebreaker on Milwaukee. Milwaukee in third place with the -3 differential, and the Whalers are in last place with the -6 differential. In first place in the Galar division, the London Lanterns are 1-1 with a +2 differential, and the Green Bay Yampers are in second place at 1-1 with a +1 differential. And the reason why the Yampers are ahead of Bayern Munchlax right now is because it's a 4-way tie, so differential is the tiebreaker. Otherwise, if it wasn't, Bayern Munchlax would obviously be ahead, which the site wouldn't read anyway, but based on the win in week 1. Bayern Munchlax are in third place with a -1 differential, and the Granville Goomies are in last place, also at 1-1 with a -2 differential. I think. How do you think this looks so far? Is this how you saw it would play out? Obviously, Steven being in third place is jarring, but like 1-1 is really not a big deal for anyone. I'm really interested in seeing how our division goes. I think it's going to be really competitive. Even I know it's only been 2 weeks, but I think it is going to be really competitive. Your division, I think. I don't want to say that you are going to run away with it, but I think you definitely could, especially since you haven't played. Have you played? Oh no, you haven't played Sahil yet, right?
No, I haven't played Sahil.
Yeah, so I mean that's going to be a big game, and I think that's in week 5. So that'll be a big game. But I think the race for second place is going to be really interesting in your division between Sahil and Jared. But yeah, what are your thoughts on how the divisions are looking so far, or the conferences rather?
I pretty much. I mean, I would largely agree with that assessment. I've always, as far as the seasons where we've actually gotten through the season, early most of it. Jared and I have been it's kind of swung back and forth. I think I obviously went on that run last season, and I believe it was actually right after I started that run, right after I got beat by Jared. And then I beat him a couple times in the seasons before that, and now I beat him this year. So it's kind of been back and forth between us. So that's an interesting head-to-head matchup. But otherwise, I think I largely agree. And then I'm not, obviously that's a 4-way tie, so the standing, the actual placements themselves are not super relevant. But Dion and Steven are obviously, two of the top threats and two of the most experienced players in the league, at least as far as its history goes. Obviously, they're both the returning championship battlers or whatever. So it's about expected, but I agree. There's that's 4 strong teams on the division, 4 people that could win on really just about any given week. So I'll be interested to see mostly how that the Galar division plays out.
Yeah. Every divisional match I think is going to be pivotal. And I think, people are still sort of getting used to their teams. I think for you, honestly, your pivot from, you didn't really play stall, but I don't know. I feel like this version of bulky offense that you've sort of found yourself using the last couple of seasons really suits your play style a lot better than maybe previous iterations of your team.
Yeah, this team is interesting because it kind of combines. I mean, it's a little bit like obviously like all the things that I have been pretty bulky and they're pretty offensive. Last season was a little bit more. A lot of times it played a little bit more like hyper offensively with like Alolan Ninetales, and just all the different like. I mean, still I have like almost everything on my team can set up in some way.
Right.
But there's a little bit more of so that team that I still affectionately call it U-turn team. The team when I had like a Powdon and then just like 9 different things that could all pivot, and it just drove people crazy. So that was in. I think there's a little bit of that in my team now. Like there's the setup mons, but then there's I still have Silvally, which is just like a pivot for whatever situation you choose to put it in. Incineroar, obviously, and then there's I've got some Volt Switch, I've got some U-turn with Whimsicott, but still maintaining a little bit of obviously that like setup offense that kind of keeps people on their toes as far as not being able to predict who's going to be setting up and which side of the offensive spectrum they're going to be setting up on.
I didn't realize you had Gyarados. I mean, Thundurus Therian feels even better now that I know that. Cause but I think you have. You have Teleport on Slowbro too.
Well, I don't think Galar gets Teleport because I think it's a Gen
really?
1. I think it's a Gen 1 learn thing.
I thought it was a TR this year or this. You're probably right though. But okay, so it doesn't get Teleport, but you still do have a lot of Switch Initiative, and like Parting Shot is such a fantastic move. I think it's probably my favorite Switch Initiative move in the game. All right, looking forward to week 3. The first matchup on the docket is the Bayern Munchlax taking on the Toledo Team Rocket. So a really huge intra cross conference matchup, and it's going to be a potential finals preview. So how are you feeling going into this one?
I mean, it is what it is. You have to check the boxes before you. I mean, it's Steven. He's always tough to play against, tough to plan against. Regieleki again. That was one of the things that like I had it in the back of my mind for a little bit, but that's one of the reasons why I decided to pull the trigger now rather than waiting until later in the season. But obviously, like I only have like one really I only have like the one immunity, and Nidoqueen like does so many things. It's hard to just rely on it specifically to just wall out something that threatening. But there's a lot of both sides have a lot of threats. Both sides can play the game a couple different ways. So it's always fun. A lot of times I end up trying to come up with something clever, and whether or not it works kind of determines whether or not I'm going to win the game. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting matchup. It's like hyper offense kind of versus bulky offense. Although Steven's team's pretty bulky too. But Como deals with Regieleki pretty well, I feel. I think Como is really, really interesting in this matchup. I think it has a really good matchup against Steven. The scary thing about Steven's team for me is like I don't know what's going to be scarfed, if anything. He has a lot of options there. We haven't really seen Metagross yet. That is a threat as well. I'm interested to see if maybe we see that this week. But I'm looking at the teams, and I feel like neither of you has a very clear, upper hand. I think I would give the slight edge to you. I just think your team makes more sense and has more, potential switches. Galarian Zapdos is super scary. And you do have Doublade, which is one of the better counters, but I mean, it also gets like Throat Chop. So, I don't know. That Pokemon is really scary, Galarian Zapdos. I think, fighting flying is such a phenomenal dual stab offensively, and it just has a really good attack stat and close combat or Thunderous Kick, and Brave Bird just do so much damage. So yeah, I mean, I guess what are you afraid of, if you don't mind answering? What are you most afraid of? Do you think that would give away anything? You don't have to answer.
No, I'm just trying to think exactly like what specifically.
Kyurem also, like, Specs Ice Beam or Specs Freeze Dry even is such an annoying move. But I mean, you do have Incineroar, but it gets Earth Power for Incineroar and Doublade too. So, if you do bring Silvally this week, I'll be interested to see which one you opt for. But go ahead. Sorry.
I think probably I don't know, Regieleki maybe, just because I mentioned it earlier about my planning as far as moving around my team a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But if Nidoqueen has to go down for some other reason, it can kind of freely move around a little bit with my team, depending on how Thunderous does as well. But there's a lot of, like, obviously the speed is concerning. He also doesn't have to invest anything in speed, because I don't have a particularly fast team as is, and it has 200 base speed. So that's always scary. And also it's like just leaving something that always he doesn't have to worry about like a ton of priority, or he can always just bring that in just in case and keep that as an option. So that's always scary. I never like going up against Pokemon like that. So that's probably the big one.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Sharpedo's also a really interesting Pokemon. I wonder if we'll see that this week. I thought for some reason that it got play rough, but it doesn't. It's unfortunate. I feel like it should.
I'm okay with it.
I'm sure you are. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't want to make you talk about it too much, because I don't want you to have to feel like you're saying too much. But it'll be a really interesting matchup, and I'm sure the one that people will be the most excited to watch. Next up are the Green Bay Yampers versus the Wisconsin Wailords. So I feel decently confident about this one. I don't really think this is, breaking news. I think Mamoswine has another incredible matchup this week. I don't think I'm giving anything away by saying that. But I think Mamoswine has a really nice matchup this week. Spectrier is obviously always a super scary Pokemon, but I feel like I have a couple of counters to it that can deal with it. And I think if I just, sort of make the right plays, that I'll probably, hopefully be able to win this one. But I don't want to say too much. What do you think?
I agree with that. Spectre is obviously, just stats-wise, it has to be a threat. It's not one of the things that I would necessarily, have picked for my teams. Mm-hmm. I like having a lot of versatility, and that's kind of the one thing that Spectre doesn't have. It kind of just does the one thing, and it does it really well. But it makes it so it's, in my mind at least, it's a little easier to game plan against. You don't have to think about, oh well, what if it does this instead, or runs this surprise thing.
Right.
There's a lot it can surprise you with. Which in my
essentially any dark type can deal with it. I mean, that's really, how it is.
Yeah, and that's so it's, and you have your ways of dealing with it. I don't think, he might still bring it. I don't think there's any imposter shenanigans you need to particularly worry about looking at your team comp. There's always something that you could do if you choose to go a setup route, but you're not like me where you have to constantly be thinking about okay, what happens if I set up and Ditto comes out. So those are kind of the two. Those are the. I think you've got a good way to deal with kind of both of the two things where, Bash can kind of start stacking things really quickly without a whole lot of like setup beforehand, just with those two things. So it's just a matter of making sure you don't get careless around those, and I think you've got a good matchup here.
I would agree. I think there are a couple of things that I think are a little bit scary that I don't want to reveal, because if he hasn't thought about it, then, I'm not interested in giving that to him. Blissey's also just a very annoying Pokemon, but if you know it's coming, it's a lot easier to deal with. Or if you know there's a chance it could come. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think there's too much to say about this one. But we'll see how it goes. We didn't do predictions. So for your game, you don't have to make a prediction. I'm going to predict that you come out victorious 2-0. That's going to be my prediction for this one. And then, what is your prediction for the Yampers versus the Wailords?
I'll say that you take it. We'll say like 4-0. Okay. I think Spectre gets a kill here or there just because you don't want to sacrifice too much, or something along those lines. He just gets some chip off with one of the other things that he has. But I think a 4-0 is about where I'd fall.
Awesome. All right, next up is the Washington Pokemon team versus the London Lanterns. It feels like these next two matches that we're going to talk about are actually pretty important for all the coaches involved. So the Washington Pokemon team are taking on the London Lanterns. Oh wait, show season stats.
It's just like,
why haven't I done that? All right, there we go. So, wow. This is a fascinating matchup, in my opinion. And what are your initial thoughts?
Man,
Jitter's team really is annoying as hell. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it's not. It's tough to deal with. He has a lot of speed.
Yes.
I think Jared will have to obviously be careful that he doesn't fall to the same trap that Steven did with letting Blaziken set up. But I think Jared has a lot of. He's got a lot of good things in his favor. Looking at this first glance at the matchup, he's got. He's got two things that are just obviously his two, kind of marquee Pokemon are just blazing fast. They've got a pretty solid type spread against most of Richie's team, I would say. Obviously, Sneasel still has Ice Shard priority, but if Jared can kind of play around that well, I think that his top two have a really good matchup against Dion's roster. But Dion's got a couple of things that can get scary fast. He's got, Sneasel can always do things. Mew, stop that. And then he's got some things that are also, between Clef and Rotom and Registeel, some things that can be tough to break, and even Vileplume. But I would lean initially, at least looking at this, towards Jared in this matchup. But what are your thoughts?
I think Jared has the better matchup here. As you said, Blaziken's super scary. The thing about Blaziken this week is it can't bring Fire Stab, Close Combat, Earthquake, Stone Edge, Swords Dance, and Protect. Like, it can't have 6 moves. So I think Jared's going to have some way to deal with whatever set Dion decides to bring, if he does bring Blaziken. Whether it's Moltres or Tentacruel. Or even Cresselia. So I think Blaziken, it's not as good of a matchup for Blaziken as it was last week. Yeah, I mean, I think for Jared, it's really about managing his switches and not to get caught off guard, kind of like how he did against you, and give Richie a potentially easy not an easy prediction, but a prediction that could swing the momentum in his favor. Like you said, Dragapult and Coco I think are fantastic in this matchup, and obviously they both do really well against Dion's top 2 Pokemon here. I think I would, Dion is such a great battler, so it's hard to pick against him. But I think I would probably lean Jared in this one as well. I think his team is just a little bit too overwhelming for Richie to deal with. But I would not count Richie out in this one.
Keep saying.
Dion. I keep on saying Richie. You said Richie too. I don't know if you noticed that, but I don't know why. Dion and Richie are not interchangeable. Dion, I think I just see Clefable and I think Richie. I think Dion, like I said, he's such a great battler, so you can't really count him out. But I think Jared's team just has a little more this week than Dion's, like you said.
Yeah. Yeah, the one thing that I will say, having played against Dion in the same conference the last 2 seasons, I think, he's probably one of the better ones at kind of pulling out those surprise picks or surprise sets. I like to think that I've generally done a good job of that because a lot of things that I've done, it seems like people kind of like struggle with predicting, or they kind of, I had SmackDown last time, and there's always things that people don't necessarily expect. But Dion is also very good at nothing. He doesn't, go for anything like all or nothing, like these really crazy, goofy sets. But he's always got, he always seems to have at least like one trick up his sleeve that really kind of throws the game off a little bit. So that's one thing to keep an eye out, I think.
Yeah, 100%. And Mew could do some things in this game, depending on what set he brings, if he does bring Mew. And like I said, Dion's just such a good and steady battler that, if he can identify what he needs to do to win, he can probably execute that. I think I said this in the first IPBL Weekly. Jared's a really good battler too, but sometimes he gets tilted if something goes wrong early. And I think that, honestly, I think that really does affect the way he plays later in the game. So I think if Jared doesn't get tilted, he should be good. What's your pick for this one?
I think it'll come down to Jared 1-0. I think it'll come down to either Dragapult or Coco cleaning up at the end.
Cool. Do you have a score prediction?
1-0.
1-0. I am also going to go 1-0 Jared. I think Dion has some setup opportunities that could allow him to win, but I think Grassy Glide really does foil, a lot of those things. Like, if you go for a Scale Shot, you go to -1 defense. If you end up going for Close Combat, Grassy Glide still does a lot of damage to Blaziken. So it's I think Rillaboom actually might have a really great game this week. So I'm going to go 1-0 though, like you. Moving on to our final matchup, the Milwaukee Mirrors are playing the Granville Goomies, and I'm pretty excited for this one. I think this is. I really enjoy Sahil versus Richie matchups. I don't know what it is about it, but this is Richie. I think I don't know. I think I enjoy the way these two play against each other. Just early impressions. I think Richie has the upper hand team wise. What do you think?
Let's see.
It actually. Well, yeah, I think.
I don't know. We'll.
You know what? Corviknight's a bit of a problem.
Yeah. I think it's close. I think, Zeraora having ways to deal with Hippowdon is big, because that's obviously his big. Again, like we saw last time, he's got a lot of flying types.
He's got some issues with certain weaknesses. So I think that, his kind of big electric check, struggling with Zeraora a little bit, not being able to switch in on it super safely, is a little bit of an issue for Richie. And I agree that Corviknight's an issue. But also, like, if Sahil is a little tentative about setting up, if he keeps trying to, like, just get some chip damage off, he could start running into the same issue that Dion did, where you just run into this wall of Regenerator.
Absolutely. To me, this match comes down to Nidoking and how much it can do. Because I think Nidoking's absolutely, absolutely incredible in this matchup. If Sahil can manage his Nidoking, if he does bring it, I guess there's a chance he doesn't, but I think he'd be crazy not to. As long as he manages his Nidoking really well, I think he can do a lot of damage to Richie's team. And Richie's speed stats or speed tiers are a little disjointed. Like, he goes from 96 all the way down to 60, 65. So I think Sahil will be able to, with a lot of his mons, just go like Adamant or Modest or whatever, and get a little bit of that extra damage. But as you said, I mean, he just has to be careful. The Regenerator core, it can wear you down. And I think if Sahil just goes hyper offensive, I don't think that would be the right thing to do, honestly. Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't really have any more thoughts than that. Let's see here. I think Richie needs to get more hazards. I just think it makes sense to have like spikes with a Regenerator core team. It makes it a lot harder to deal with. Wow, Sahil has a lot of fake out. What the heck? I said initially I think Richie has a bit of the upper hand, but I do think Sahil's going to win. I think Nidoking's going to get like 5 kills, and Sahil's going to end up winning 3-0. What's your prediction?
I think it'll be like 2-0 Sahil. Depending on like how he has to kind of like nail down what exactly he wants to do with his team and like how he's going to deal with certain things. I think that's been kind of a running theme with Sahil in this like league, is like he kind of has these teams and then like sometimes his like identity gets a little like off all over. Like he'll be like, oh, I'm gonna build this kind of team, and then like he doesn't necessarily like stick to it, or he tries to do some other things and it doesn't necessarily work out. So it'll see like how he just chooses to use things, and I think he does have a little bit. Looking at this, he does have some like strong advantages, so he's just got to make sure to actually like use them.
Well, and I think the trap Sahil falls into, and a lot of people fall into this trap, is I think rather than building around a plan or a couple of plans, a couple of contingencies, it's like, how can my one mon deal with all of my opponent's Pokemon, and I think that's where he sort of gets into trouble. Instead of putting mons that can help him position himself to win at the end, it's a bunch of mons that can potentially win, but nothing that's going, or not without, there's not really a plan there. I think he's gotten a lot better at that actually this season and in the TBA, which he participated in. So I think if Sahil sticks to the plan that he has, because I mean, you kind of know Richie's plan more or less, right? I think it's not going to be I think it's always going to be something similar with Richie's team. If Sahil can stick to his plan, I think he can come out victorious. And like you said, like he can't let go of his win con early. He can't give away his Pokemon cheaply, which is a trap you can fall into against a team like Richie's with the Regenerator core. So, but I think Sahil will come out on top. Any final thoughts on this one?
Nope. I think that pretty much covers it. You are right that this has generally been one of the more interesting matchups throughout the seasons.
Absolutely. All right, let's take a look at the stats for this season. We have 3 Pokemon tied at the top, with 5 kills: Blaziken, Mamoswine, Regieleki. What's interesting is all of these all of these got all of their kills in one match. It wasn't, over 2 matches. Nidoqueen and Silvally for you, Matt, both have 4 kills. And then Landorus and Feeny have 3 each, and then 2, I'm sure a lot of Pokemon have 2. Silvally, Blaziken, Mamoswine, Regieleki are all the kill-death ratio leader with a 4 kill-death ratio. So interesting stuff there. I think 3 Pokemon that you might not, or really 5 Pokemon you might not expect to see at the very top at the beginning of the season, although they are all, well, Silvally's not that powerful, but Silvally's just a solid Pokemon. Blaziken, Mamoswine, Regieleki, Nidoqueen are super powerful Pokemon, so maybe not all that surprising, but interesting to say the least. Most deaths, I mean, it's been 2 weeks, so are there any other interesting stats? Nah. What are your thoughts on the kill leaders this season so far?
I mean, some of them I expected. Mamoswine has been like a kill leader, like in draft leagues for like ages. Regieleki, obviously, like it just cleans things up super well. Everyone's favorite Pokemon, Necrozma, has yet to even like touch the field at all. Like I haven't had to bring it out at any point in time. Everyone still has to plan for it, which is fun for me. But it just hasn't had a chance to do anything yet. So we'll see if it makes a couple runs where it goes 3-0 or 4-0 or 5-0 by itself. So we'll see what happens.
If I had to pick a Mon to sort of fall out of this top 3, I think it would be Regieleki. I think once people... I think... I know I got just destroyed by Regieleki, but I still don't think it's that great. You just have to not do what I did and throw away your ground Pokemon. But I mean, it is scary. It's super scary. It hits really hard. Its ability is really good, and obviously it has the 200 speed. So I just think that that's a less consistent Mon than maybe something like Blaziken or Mamoswine that can. Well, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. We'll see.
If I had to guess, I would say that Blaziken would fall out just because, like,
right.
Because it doesn't have, because it relies on Swords Dance and Speed Boost to get a lot of its like power from.
Right.
It's kind of situational set up.
Regieleki can just clean up. You're right. Like it can come in and get a kill. So it could get like 1 or 2 kills every week for sure. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see what else breaks in here. I mean, Dragapult's down here at 2. I'm sure there's a lot of things at 2, so I guess we'll see. But sorry, what were you... Yeah, sorry, I cut you off there. Did you have more to add to that?
No, that's pretty much... I mean, it's early. There's not a whole lot there's not necessarily a whole lot you can read from it, just other than seeing, like, you can tell what happened in this particular game based on looking at this, but there's not a whole lot to read into the stats just yet.
Right. You do have 5 Pokemon in the top 10 for kill-death ratio, so that's cool. But, like, Komo's 1-0, and so is Gyarados, so...
Yeah, I mean, I'm plus 9 right now. So.
Right, exactly. I mean, you're the only undefeated team, which is crazy 2 weeks into the season. That's kind of wild. I wonder if that's ever happened before. But I think that's pretty much it for us. Any final thoughts before we get out of here?
No, I think I pretty much covered it.
Sweet. All right, guys, make sure you hit the like button down below and subscribe if you want to see more IPBL action. I don't know who else is watching this. Sile's probably the only one who's listening to this far. But if you did enjoy, please make sure you hit the like button down below. We'll be back next week for a week 3 review. You can also check out our public website to follow along with the stats and the standings. A link to that will be in the description below. With that, I am going to get out of here. Thank you guys for watching.